Welcome into the Thunder Basketball Universe presented by COOP Ale Works. We are back in the United States of America. The Thunder has traveled north of the border to Montreal, then back to the United States to play the Charlotte Hornets, and then back to Oklahoma City inside of Paycom Center to play the Milwaukee Bucks, which this team played yesterday. We're recording this on October 18th, Wednesday, which means Thursday, the Thunder has their final preseason game in Tulsa against the Detroit Pistons again. So the Thunder's had two home games against the Detroit Pistons, but haven't played the Pistons inside of Paycom Center yet.
Yeah, riddle me that. First of all, that might be some sort of record for number of home preseason games that aren't actually in your home arena.
Good point.
So great stuff that the Thunder's just continue to kind of expand its market and expand its base. That's what the preseason is for. Yeah. It's great.
It was a lot of fun going north of the border to Montreal. We'll get into that a little bit later. We're also going to get into a great interview with one Vasilije Micić that our very own Nick Gallo got. So stick around for that. But first things first, we got some stats of the week.
Oh, yes, we do.
That we've got to break down. It's been a little bit since we podcasted, so we've got some good numbers that we got to talk about. Nick, I'll let you go first. What you got?
My number is 34. And that is the number of assists that the Thunder racked up against the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah, you've heard of them and their defense, which is amazing. And yet the Thunder scored 124 points, racked up 34 assists in that game on Tuesday night. And it just goes to show the way that this Thunder team's offense is continuing to click and really has operated with the same level of trust, patience, balance that it's needed to all preseason. And yeah, Milwaukee didn't have a couple guys in the lineup, but they started Damian Lillard, they started Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a few other veterans, and the Thunder was able to execute and score on them.
The Thunder's ball movement over the course of this preseason has been incredible, and we all know the Thunder's offense, it has an identity, right? Yeah. It's move the ball, find the open man, get downhill, and create options on your drive. And for the Thunder to not miss a beat, when they start training camp and start these preseason games, but to seem to keep building as they go on throughout these games has been really, really impressive to watch. And the thing that stands out to me, we've talked a lot about the pace that OKC plays with. We talk about the space that they create for the ball on the floor, which has been one of my favorite things. But the biggest thing that I've noticed, and it really shined in the Milwaukee game and then a little bit in the Charlotte game as well, is the versatility of where these passes are coming from. Josh Giddey, obviously, an excellent source of these passes. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, of course, excellent source of these passes. But Chet Holmgren, 3 assists.
Yeah.
Olivier Sarr, 3 assists. How many did Ooze have? I feel like he had 4.
He had 4. Yeah.
And so, these are guys that are facilitating, they're creating opportunities for their teammates. My favorite pass of the game was when Chet Holmgren made a backdoor cut from the wing and Olivier Sarr hit him on the pass and finished the shot. And I was like, both of those guys are above 6'11". How
7 foot to 7 foot.
How is that working right now?
Well, I guess the reason it works is because those guys can see over the top of everybody else. And that's really what the Thunder has built this roster upon. You mentioned Ooze, and I wanted to point out a sequence that we talked to Mark Daigneault about as well recently in practice, that Ooze had this great stretch at the end of the third quarter of the Milwaukee game where he served as the roll man. He's basically playing the 5 for the Thunder. This is a guy that has guard skills, effectively, acts like a guard on the floor most times, but here he is as the roll man. He catches the ball in the middle of the floor on that roll, is able to whip his head and his body around back behind him to give the kick out pass to Isaiah Joe for an assist. In the very next play, he's doing the same thing, except that ball, instead of going into him on the roll, gets skipped over the top, and it leads to a 3 for Lindy Waters III. That sequence right there is just a great demonstration of the way that the Thunder is very creative in utilizing its players and putting them in positions to be threats all across the floor, that all 5 guys can be threats, and that there's so many opportunities off of each set and play design that the ball doesn't have to go to one place every single time. There's so many different tentacles that it can go to.
It forces the person with the ball to really read the floor and not just play the action, right? And one thing that goes hand in hand with the great passes that are being made are the cuts that are being made. You mentioned the one by Ooze where the ball got skipped across the court. Well, that other shot might not have been possible had it not been for Ooze cutting full speed down the middle of the lane. And we saw a lot of cuts in the Charlotte game in particular. Remember when a lot of guys sat out for OKC and we saw a lot of guys who hadn't seen a lot of run for the Thunder quite yet. And their ball movement, their activity offensively led to so many quality looks. And the Thunder shot the ball incredibly well against Milwaukee as a result of this ball movement and this cutting and this activity offensively. 56% from the field and 18 made threes.
Yeah, the shooting percentages were through the roof the whole time. And it's not because guys were just making shots out of their mind. They were getting good shots. Right. They were getting shots at the rim. They were getting catch and shoot looks from behind the three-point line. That game was really a synthesis of what the Thunder wants to be about offensively, even with the final product. Of course, there's the process, and that is going to remain the same no matter what when the Thunder goes into these games. The outcome might vary, but this one was pretty special because it was great balance scoring-wise. There was great distribution in terms of the assists, as you were pointing out, and ideally, that is what's going to make the Thunder such a difficult challenge in the regular season and then, hopefully beyond, is the unpredictability of that. How do you know what valve to shut off? And we're going to talk about trying to shut off valves of star players and big-time players here in a second. It's a lot harder to figure that out when all five guys on the floor are a threat are triple threats at all time.
It's after the game, Coach Dagnall said that this game against Milwaukee was a step forward in about every asset. And what you point out and laid out is the reason why this group was just so strong offensively in that game. Let's talk a little bit about the defense because this is my stat of the week. The number is 101, and that's the amount of points that the Milwaukee Bucks scored. The same Milwaukee Bucks team that had Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
And played them for almost the entire game, probably about 25 or 30 minutes.
Exactly. This was a very veteran-laden, heavy-hitting Milwaukee Bucks team, and this is the fourth preseason game for the Thunder. The previous three games, we heard time after time after time, the defense is the focus for OKC, wanting to take steps forward, strides forward in that area. That is the biggest emphasis in training camp, particularly transition defense, sitting down, guarding, attention to detail, those sort of things, just tightening all of those screws, and then doing that for a consistent 48-minute effort. This Milwaukee game really showed what that is supposed to look like for OKC. And all of those pieces started to really come together for OKC in this game. The attention to detail was incredible, recognizing where Damian Lillard is on the floor and forcing other guys to be the shot creators for Milwaukee.
Yeah, it was fascinating because, the Lillard-Lou Dort matchup is always one that's just amazing to watch. And I think Damian started 0 for 6 from the field and had 0 points through most of the first half. But it wasn't only Lou that was locked onto him the entire game. There were times that Shea was on him. There were times that J-Dub was on him. It was actually possession that Josh was on him. And that is a really good sign that the Thunder has a little bit more opportunity and confidence to, hey, if we're cross-matched, we'll just hang in there for a possession or two, and we don't have to summon Lou Dort to get him on there. But the fact of the matter was OKC was really able to neutralize Lillard in that matchup, and I thought it was very cool to hear from Chet Holmgren after the game that he and Lou were like texting each other and in communication all day leading up to the game. This is a preseason game, and those guys are talking through, okay, how are we defending this tonight? How are we dealing with those ball screens that, everyone has been talking about? Okay, what are teams going to do when Giannis sets a screen and rolls and then Lillard comes around the screen? Well, the Thunder gave a pretty good clinic on how to deal with that because both guys, they ended up with 23 combined points on 23 combined shots. You can't do better than that in terms of an efficient defense standpoint.
Everyone was really locked in and knew what the game required out of them. And I want to talk about J-Dub having the opportunity to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo in this game because obviously his defensive assignments this season have been already a really stacked list. You start out with Victor Wembanyama, you pick up Isaiah Stewart in Detroit, and then you guard Giannis Antetokounmpo. This is what you get for putting on some weight and strength in the offseason, right? But he handled his own. He really did. And I talked to him about it at practice about, being able to pick up guys like this. Is it just physicality? Are you just focused on just getting into them and showing your force? And he was like, it mainly, yes, but it's also just taking up their space, their airspace as much as possible, but also having the humility to know that these guys are elite players. They are obviously bigger than me. And there may be times where I get dunked on.
The ball is going to get flushed through the hoop at some point. We saw Victor do it. We saw Giannis do it. It's okay.
It's okay.
It's a long game.
That's what comes with putting your nose in the fight.
No doubt.
You don't get dunked on unless your nose is in the fight, and that's where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and J-Dub is trying to do the work early in possessions. You can see him try to ride those guys out further on the floor so that their catches aren't these deep seal catches in the paint that Michael Cage always tries to get on us. When we play pickup with him.
Not me though.
Yeah, couldn't be Paris.
Be me.
Yeah, but if J-Dub is forcing those guys out further on the floor, I mean, this is a long-time principle in Oklahoma City of make those catches, instead of at 10 feet, make them at 15 feet.
Right.
If you can stop them, those catches from being 15 feet, make them 20 feet. That is a huge, huge difference in the game. I think back to, playoff series going up against a guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, and the difference between a game one where he just absolutely lit the Thunder up, and then the next game was a matter of a foot or two in terms of where he was catching the ball. And for these players that are changing the face of the NBA, at the end of the day, further away is probably easier to guard than closer to the hoop. And so that's something the Thunder is going to be focused on. And J-Dub, with that extra beef, certainly going to be able to provide that.
He certainly did. And to your point, the farther out you go, the more room your help side defense has to work its magic as well. And so the Thunder really taking a lot of strides forward on both ends of the floor, especially on the defensive end in that game against Milwaukee. All right, we look back to Milwaukee.
Yep.
Let's look back a little bit further, Nick.
Further
Gallo.
in the time machine?
Further in the time machine and north of the border. Let's go back to Montreal, because we would be remiss if we did not talk about this incredible trip that the Thunder took to Lou Dort's hometown in Montreal. It's part of the NBA's Canada series, and it was truly kind of a surreal experience to see Lou and the reception that Lou got when he walked into Bell Center. He walked out to center court. He had that microphone to give the pregame address. He couldn't get a word out because the crowd was so loud. And he told us afterwards that he almost shed a tear. But he had to hold it together to give that address.
Lou said that it was really going to hit him that he was getting to play a home game in his hometown of Montreal for the first time since he was a junior in high school. He thought that was really going to hit him when he walked off the plane. And then you could tell it was really hitting him again when he walked into the Bell Center for shoot-around. And then it really cascaded over him when he was at center court, and he was able to address the fans the way that he did at midcourt. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy who gives his heart and soul to the team every single night. And I loved seeing the guys. They were all lined up, and everybody's, Lou, go Lou, go Lou. And there's just something about this group and this team that when somebody has a special thing happening to them, everyone's rallying around that flag to make it even more special. And that's definitely what we witnessed in Montreal. And it was really exaggerated once the ball actually got tipped and the game got started.
Okay. All right. So here's the deal. Lou was going to get a shot, right? Yeah. The whole team was going to make sure that Lou got the shot. He had the first opportunity off the first play, corner three. He wanted it.
That's the one he wanted.
That's the one he wanted. He missed it. You could tell the whole crowd was like, right? So you could hear the deflation of the Montreal crowd. But then for the rest of the first quarter, Lou basically didn't miss. The man finished the night with, how many did he finish with? 24 points, yep. 5 made threes. I mean, he really put on a show in front of his whole crowd. And he said after the game, he told his teammates, y'all, I just wanted one. Yeah. I just wanted one. But his teammates had his back.
Not to get too serious about this, but what was so cool is that the shots that he got immediately afterwards kind of came in transition, broken floor. Those were the ones that he hit that really got him going. It was a transition three on kind of a kick out, and then it was a fast break kick ahead that there was somebody else out there with him. It was a 2-on-0 fast break, and there was a split second where I thought Lou might just dish it off.
Yeah.
And then I think he had that moment of realization of I really should dunk in front of these Montreal fans right now, shouldn't I? And so he went up and he gave a huge two-handed dunk. It was awesome.
You know what my favorite thing about this game was because every time Lou's name is called for the starting five here in Paycom Center, the whole crowd goes, Lou, right? And it kind of sounds like boo if you don't know what you're listening for, but it's very special. It's a little game.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Lou's name is called in Montreal. And what do we hear? Lou. And it's just it's so great to see that tradition travel north of the border.
I'm glad you brought up the fans because that game sold out within a week of tickets going on sale. Massive crowd there. It felt like, many of the guys said it felt like a real NBA game, a playoff game. At the end of that game, the first 3 preseason games for the Thunder all came down to within a total of 6 points. That was another one that was really, really tight at the end. And the crowd was like chanting defense and they were really into it. And this wasn't the Thunder's home market, but here this crowd was super involved and into the game. And that just sort of raised the stakes and the enjoyment of all of this.
Yeah. Everyone after the game was just waxing poetic about how incredible the crowd was inside of Bell Center. It was really, really loud. So many Lou Dort jerseys, so many Shai Gilgeous-Alexander jerseys. We saw some Lou Dort fatheads. I mean, like, truly, there was so much love for Lou and Shai as well. But the fun didn't stop on the court. And when Lou Dort left and he was walking out of off the court through the tunnel, he met a couple of other professional athletes from Canada.
Well, the Bell Center is host to the Montreal Canadiens of the NHL. And then I believe the Montreal Alouettes of the Canadian Football League also play in that building. They certainly play in Montreal.
They do.
But both of those teams had player representatives come to the game that night and present Lou with personalized jerseys with Dort's name. And then he walked into the press conference room.
One on each shoulder. The Alouettes on this shoulder, the Canadians on this shoulder. And he just made sure that everyone saw that he had those jerseys. And then halfway through his interview, Shai comes barging in wearing a Montreal Canadiens jersey.
I couldn't believe that he was wearing this.
I couldn't. I'm so glad you said this because I was thinking the whole time, I was like, wait, he can't be a Canadiens fan, can he?
Maybe for one night. Maybe for one night. It's the beginning of the season.
You're right.
For one night he could wear that Canadiens jersey.
Yeah.
As
a thank you to Montreal.
Thank you to Montreal. And that was really the tone of the whole trip, was like the Thunder was so grateful. The players, Mark Daignault reiterated this numerous times, so grateful for the city of Montreal kind of allowing the Thunder to host this game there. It was a chance for basically half the business office to get up to Montreal. There were so many great connections being made just between the city and business leaders and all sorts of folks. And then the Thunder was really able to kind of put on that show that people are so accustomed to seeing here at Paycom Center.
Yeah, there were so many great activations that happened throughout Montreal. One of my favorites that still stands out in my mind, the Thunder held a youth basketball clinic at Lou's old school.
That's so
and
cool.
It was just amazing. Obviously, there was a little bit of a language barrier, but these kids, once they realized that the Thunder was there, they saw Rumble the Bison, they were just into it. And it was so cool. They had a mural of Lou Dort up on the wall. And it was just really cool to see how much Lou means to the city, and then in turn, how much the city means to Lou.
I just think about the last 3 months of Lou Dort's life and how foreign this would have all been to him as an idea 6 years ago.
Right.
He's representing his country, Team Canada, in the FIBA World Championship. They win the bronze medal, the furthest they've ever gone. He's the headliner of a preseason game in his home city for an NBA team that he's had this meteoric rise with. And 6 years ago, he's this kid in Montreal, like not sure which way is up, whether he's going to have a professional career at all. And yet here he is having these amazing experiences, representing his country and representing the neighborhood that he came from, Montreal Nord.
And the reception was just incredible from the Montreal fans, the crowd. It was so much fun. And personally, I love that city. That place was incredible. It was beautiful. Yeah. I love a good sweater weather destination. And it was perfect fall weather in Montreal. The leaves were turning. Got some good coffee. Did you get those little maple cookies that they had?
I didn't see the maple cookies.
It's like a thing in Canada. They have like cookies that are like maple syrup cookies. So I had to get a box of them.
There was all sorts of delis and cafes, and my head was like whipping back and forth as I was walking down these stone streets that were all blocked off. It's a great pedestrian city. So we'll see. Maybe there'll be another trip for an NBA team or the Thunder in the future. We'll see.
We'll keep an eye out. Well, it's been really cool to see Lou Dort in his hometown. There's so much international representation on this roster. Thunder has 8 international players on its roster. And you, Nick Gallo, got a chance to sit down with one of them, one of the newest ones, Vasilije Micić, one of the newest faces of the Thunder roster. We'll get to that interview right after this break.
COOP Ale Works is the proud sponsor of Thunder Basketball Universe. Brewers of the fan favorites F5 IPA and 99-calorie Ice Chest IPA. You'll find those and many more COOP beers at retailers across Oklahoma. Learn more at coopaleworks.com.
All right, now we've got Vasilije Micić here with us. Vasa, thank you so much for joining the Thunder Basketball Universe podcast. And I want to ask you, you've been in OKC now for a bit. What have you learned about Oklahoma City? Are you feeling a little bit more acclimated now?
First of all, thanks for having me here. I still feel a little bit surreal about everything what's going on because it's a big change for me in every possible way, but of course it's a positive change and a big thing that happened to me. So far I feel very, very nice in Oklahoma. The organization treat me very well, all the teammates, even they're younger than me, but they're very friendly, and the city is nice so far. I like it, especially the downtown I like, so we'll see how the time will go by.
Yeah, our fans, they know all about OKC, but they're going to be fascinated to learn about your hometown and where you're from. Will you maybe just give us some background on you and your hometown in Serbia? What is there to do there? What would you recommend to somebody if they were going back to where you grew up?
I have two places where I grew up. First place is my hometown. It's a mountain. It's very high altitude. That's why I was first of all skier, and then I became a basketball player. And the second place is Belgrade, of course, capital city of Serbia. Serbia as a country is really small, but very talented, especially for the athletes with the ball. We have a lot of successful players in each sport. Of course, one of the very interesting story can be that I grew up in the same mountain where Novak Djokovic comes from. We are like one of the kind families that we actually grow up there permanently. So, yeah, this is something that it's related to that place. And beside that, we have a lot of nice things to visit. But as I said, like mainly we are a sport country.
I have so many follow-ups. Thank you for all that great information. Do you know Novak Djokovic?
Yes.
Okay.
Especially his youngest brother. We are same generation.
Very cool. And tell me about skiing. Is this a thing that you grew up doing with your family all the time?
Yeah, I was professional skier. I was 4 times champion in my country, and my sister is a snowboarder. She was also world champion in snowboard for youth categories. So we are more oriented to ski sports. Basketball happened accidentally for me, but I don't regret.
How does professional basketball happen accidentally to somebody?
Because we had to move to the city. There was not so many schools in that place where I grew up, so we had to move for how do you call this, high classes? Like we had only four years, so we had to move to a bigger city, and that's how I started.
What were you like as a skier? Obviously a champion, but are you somebody that was just extremely agile? Were you extremely fast? What was your style, so to speak?
At that age, you cannot compete beside only 2 categories, which is slalom and giant slalom. So I was better at giant slalom, which is faster. So I was kind of crazy kid, but I don't know. Now when I see these days, I can't believe that I did this. It was too crazy.
You talked about Belgrade being just this great place, great source of basketball talent. Why do you think that's been the case? We've seen so many incredible players come out of Belgrade, including yourself.
I think in general, the Yugoslavia as an ex-country has so much talent, including Croatia, Slovenia, Montenegro, all the countries that belong to that one country. And of course, Serbia as well. I don't know, I think we have very good teachers. We have some sort of natural talent too. Genetically, we are a very tall nation with good seeds, I would say, like we have something genetically, and as well we are pretty high and professional workers. I think we really dedicate our life to these kind of things. So as I said, for such a small country like we are, we kind of have very, very big talents.
Well, I've heard the city itself is beautiful also. If I were to go there on vacation, where would you send me? Monuments or restaurants? What places would I need to hit?
Historically, the city is very well known. We have such a big history as a country as well. Monuments are something very nice next to the rivers because there are cross of the big rivers, and that's a very nice place to be. And of course, the lifestyle in Belgrade is very dynamic. People are very friendly. We have one of the best, maybe, nightlife in terms of the atmosphere, music, live music. So that's something I would always suggest to people to enjoy time.
Belgrade in Serbia, I mean, at the cross section of so many things throughout European history, what level of pride is there in just being from that place? Is there a connection that goes, deep within people there?
I mean, you could maybe follow this year World Cup in Manila, where we ended up as a second place, which is crazy achievement. And that's one of the examples how much pride and character we have as a country, and as I said, like all the countries around. So obviously we have to be like that. We cannot fight with other people only with talent. We have to be always extra motivated and ready for fighting, I would say.
Well, you obviously had to fight to be a two-time professional athlete in two different sports.
Yeah.
Do you remember, when you had to move away from your mountain town down to Belgrade, how did you fall in love with the game of basketball?
It was with some basketball camp that was at the mountain where I grew up, and then that's how I first time faced with the basketball. And then mainly I supposed to started playing soccer because that's the main sport in general in Europe. But for my country, basketball is sports number one. And my sister was the one who is responsible for me going to basketball.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Why was she responsible for that?
I don't know. She thinks that in generally basketball players are well educated people. They behave well, so they represent country well. So I think these kind of things were more for basketball than soccer.
Tell me about the intensity of the EuroLeague, and you played professionally, obviously over in Europe. What is that like, and how do you think that's sort of prepared you for this opportunity in the NBA?
I think in general European basketball improve a lot, especially as organization, because they are trying to follow up with NBA with many different things. We really had me personally, actually, I had very good time last 5 years with my team in Turkey, Istanbul, Anadolu Efes, because the team is really trying to compare themselves with the NBA organizations. So that's very big improvement. Also, beside that, all the other teams are trying to keep up the pace with that, and that's a big difference from the past. Beside that, European style is a little bit harder. Like the coaches are still very dominant over there. They try to give their stamp in the team, and that's something that also gives a lot of well educations to the players. Fundamentally, we are very well educated too, so I think the adjustment in NBA is getting more and more easier. But definitely the athleticism and physicality here is the biggest difference. So I hope I will find a way to adjust.
Quite a few NBA players have joined the NBA from Anadolu Efes, the team that you were with in Turkey. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe the Turkish league and how that compared to your EuroLeague games when you're playing teams from all across Europe?
I mean, domestic league in Turkey is quite quality, and we had to play both competitions so we can have similar amount as the NBA in terms of games. So the Turkish league is something that really improves your confidence as well, especially for the Americans who are coming from the college or they are still unexperienced. That league can really help them to prove themselves and then to reach the level of EuroLeague, which is, as I said, like very high level of competition. And that's something that also creates a lot of talents for them. You can see that now they have also Alperen from Houston. He's a kid who started in a very small city in Turkey. So then they had the Furkan Korkmaz, Çedi Osman. It's a big success for a country like them. So obviously they are doing decent work so far.
You have reached the heights of the game over in Europe. You were named Player of the Year. Mark Daigneault said you have nothing to prove coming here to the U.S. and coming to the NBA. How much pride do you just take in your game and the fact that you are coming here and you're putting it all on the line in this new situation? You're really testing your own limits.
You said correctly. I think I decided something very important for me to to kind of get out of my comfort zone, because even things that happen in Europe, I honestly didn't plan them. I didn't know it's going to happen, so I just went like day by day, try to improve every day as much as I can, and this is something that I'm trying to do it here as well. So I don't bring anything from there. I start from zero. I want to be an excited player, even though I'm surrounded with very young players. But I said also to the coach that I might be one of the most excited players too, because I feel like that's what turns me on, and I'm ready for this new challenge, honestly.
Yeah, well, you know how to gear yourself up and prepare for a game. Can you take me through, how do you get ready for a game from when you wake up in the morning until that ball gets tipped in the evening? What's going through your mind, and what are the things that you're doing physically to prepare yourself for that night's battle?
There is nothing much to do except basic things that kind of became special. I mean, I have a lot of routines. I'm not superstitious, which is very important, big change in my life. But definitely I have my routine that is based on always being prepared for practice and then prepared for the game. And of course, I believe that mentally it's the toughest part is to be always ready. Like these ups and downs that we actually as the athletes have very, very often, because our dynamic of life is very fast and very challengeable. So that's something that I always like to do. I have one lady that I work with her. She helped me a lot to always stay on the ground, and like that you can accept your bad game and you can always be fine with your good game. So in the long term you kind of win, I believe.
Well, that mindset fits perfectly in OKC in just terms of staying grounded and keeping an even keel, not getting too high, too low. What have you learned about the game itself? You know, obviously you've crafted this mindset of being able to handle the ups and downs, but what about on the floor? Have there been some things over the course of your career that maybe when you first started out playing, you didn't really quite get, that now you feel like, okay, I'm very technically sound in this area. Maybe I know where the pass should go on the pick and roll, or I know which defender to read and how to read them. Anything in particular that you feel like you've really improved upon?
I obviously have so much experience, but even though I try to play very spontaneous, because I think that's the best way to play. Because if you try to rely on your experience a lot, it kind of make up your mind, and then you start to be too obvious for defense. I like to play in the moment, which gives me a lot of unpredictable decisions for defense, of course, in a good way. I'm not saying to play very wild, but that's the way I try to approach every game. That's how I feel I'm most productive.
Yeah, creativity, so vital. Basketball is an art form in some ways too, and you have so many teammates who play that way as well. Shea and Josh Giddey with his passing. How exciting is it to be playing with these guys who sort of share that spontaneity with you?
To be honest, we have, beside those two guys, so many talented players. Like I think this team is, in my opinion, extremely talented on each position, and not only those two guys, which are tremendously good, but the other guys as well. I think with some good fit for everyone, we can really be difficult for the opponents to face too, because we are very, very full packages like players. That's my opinion. But definitely those two players are very, very talented, and I'm so happy to have someone next to me that I can learn from too.
Yeah. In order to actually utilize that talent in the game, though, you and these guys that we're talking about, all of your teammates, it's been years and years of honing skill work, and you can't be creative and spontaneous if you're dribbling the ball off your foot. So if you were to give some advice to young players out there of some drills to work on or some things to do to really prepare themselves, what would they be?
My opinion is it has to be efficient. Honestly, like there are a lot of exercises or drills that people like to do that are not so efficient in terms of game pace and game rhythm. So my basic stuffs are always based on something that is very similar to what I'm producing on the court, and fundamentally this is basically stuff that you can really create something off of that, like not to, I don't know, bounce 35 times, or you have to be efficient. That's my opinion, as well as for the shots too. So that's what changed my game a lot since 2016 when I changed.
Yeah, just as you've continued to learn more about this team, the culture of the guys in the locker room, What stands out to you about this group that you're going to be playing with off the floor? What they're like off the floor?
I still need time to learn about it because I've been playing professionally for 13 years. I've seen so many things, and unfortunately, in professional world, there are not so many friendships. Everyone's are focused on their life, and this is fair because everything's so fast. Everything is surrounded with a lot of marketing stuff, and you can be one day here, tomorrow you can get traded. In NBA in Europe, you can spend one season somewhere and be somewhere else. But I feel like here they have some friendships already that they created, and even I'm older than them, I try to adjust and be their friend too.
Well, they're going to learn a lot from you. You're probably going to learn a lot from them, a lot of social media stuff and all that. But we really appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much, Vasa. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. After that interview, I've got a million more questions for Vasilije.
That's what I said to him in the interview.
Literally, a million more questions. The skiing thing, where did that come from? How did it start? Is it a family tradition? Like, I need to know more. Anything you could tell me, Nick.
Just culturally, the mountain town that he grew up in, which, by the way, is the same town that Novak Djokovic, the star tennis player, is from as well. That was just what you did. You're kind of up in the mountains, and skiing is like a big part of the culture. But it turns out that Vasa's big sister was a snowboarder and then also a basketball player. And she was the one who kind of convinced Vasa that, hey, basketball is the way to go. And as he said in the interview, his sister said, basketball players are usually well educated. They really represent themselves well, represent our culture well. And that was something that really helped convince Vasa that once they moved down to Belgrade, that this is something that he should pursue. He basically said, basketball was an accident. And I would just love to know what it must feel like for the pro sport that you play to have just been an accident. But when you're extremely talented, when you can be the 4-time Serbian skiing champion, 2-time champion in all of the Balkans, I guess you've just got the innate physical gifts to be able to do what you want.
Imagine being just so good at basketball on accident.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's incredible. Incredible job with this interview, Nick Gallo.
It was so fun. He was so easy to talk to.
And we've learned a lot about Vasa since he's been here, obviously with everything that you uncovered in this awesome interview, but also on the floor and how he's kind of adjusting to life in the NBA, but also life in the US. He's obviously a vet of the EuroLeague, a champion, an MVP. This man is highly, highly decorated, but he's a rookie in the NBA, which is an entirely different league with a different size floor, right? And there's a defensive 3-second rule that really changes the game and how the lane is spaced out. And so all of these things are things that he's adjusting to in a game.
Yeah, but he's adjusted quite well.
Yes.
He said that guys are trying to be physical with him. He can tell they're treating him like a rookie, and he was like, well, I guess I am, so that makes that's fair.
I'm a 29-year-old rookie.
But he's just handled himself so well. The patience that we see from him with the ball in his hands is really, really impressive. He's already racked up 18 assists in 3 games, hasn't played more than I think 24 minutes in any of those games, so he's getting kind of those second unit rotation minutes and putting, for a guy to be averaging 6 assists a game in those types of minutes is extremely impressive. It would be one of the highest marks for any reserve player in the NBA if this were to carry over to the regular season. Things will certainly get more difficult for him as teams start to actually scheme and get to know him in his game, but really nice, easy returns for him so far, and just in the fact that he's able to connect with some of his teammates the way that he has already on the floor.
One of my favorite connections happened in the Milwaukee game. I remember my seat in the arena is right next to the baseline opposite of the opposing team bench. And so I'm right next to the corner, and Jalen Williams was sneaking, like J-Dub, yes, kind of like legitimately tiptoeing across the baseline. And there was a mismatch. Milwaukee just did not have their coverages right, and J-Dub recognized it and like kind of had a flicker of the eyes with Vasa, who was at half court, and just threw it up to the rim. J-Dub immediately hit the gas, elevate, dunk, alley-oop, timeout. We got to talk it over. And I just thought that was incredible court vision and awareness by Vasilije Micić, this new guy. But he's clearly got IQ, he's clearly got vision, and he's clearly got experience enough to recognize opportunities like that.
Can I add to the story from my perspective?
Because definitely. You're on the other end of the floor.
I'm on the other side of the floor. And I was sitting by the scorer's table, and I could see Mark Daigneault call out the action as the Thunder was flowing up court on that lob play that you're talking about. And so I asked Mark, did you know that Vasa was going to throw that ball from half court when you called out the play? And he was like, no, not at all. We just, we were cross-matched, and that's what I called out. But I think that's an even bigger signal in terms of that just innate connection with guys, that if Vasa had listened to the letter of the law of that play that Mark Daigneault had called out, he would have waited until they flowed into offense, got set up. Instead, he just accelerated how that play was supposed to unfold by recognizing the situation. And that's something else that really came through in this interview, is Vasa really understands that basketball is a spontaneous, creative game. It is not pre-planned. You can't preordain it. It's not like baseball where it's your turn to hit and it's time to go up and you got to stand there and wait for the ball to come to you. This is a organic, ever developing process of basketball that, takes different shapes and forms. Vasa seems to really enjoy that and tap into that in sort of an artistic way.
Well, and it fits in kind of with the mentality and philosophy of the whole team. Look at a guy like Shea and how he plays. It's so spontaneous. It's so read and react but all under control, completely poised and unrattled. And for a guy to be able to make those quick decisions and read the floor like that, even when there's a play being called and actually making the right play on the floor, that fits in so well with how this team wants to play. They want to be able to take the right option, right opportunity out there on the floor and do so controlled, poised, and at their own pace.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen as we kind of, to bring you back to the 34 assist point, that's what the Thunder has been putting on display. Over 28 assists per game in the preseason. That would be one of the highest marks in the NBA if you were to extrapolate that over a regular season. So what the Thunder is hoping to do is this last game of the preseason on Thursday up in Tulsa, to be able to continue down that path, to string together another really good defensive performance so that it's not just that one outlier defensive performance that you've talked about, and be able to carry over that momentum with a few days of practice over the weekend into next week.
All right, let's talk into what's on tap. You already touched on the next game for the Thunder, Thursday, inside the BOK Center at Tulsa. The Thunder's always so excited to be up in Tulsa, in front of a Tulsa crowd. This is such a cool environment for OKC. Obviously, the Thunder has such a reach out there with the Thunder Fellows program, and it's always so cool to be inside that building and hear the Thunder fans that are all the way up in Tulsa.
Yeah, it's just a quick zoom up the turnpike. Not that big of a deal. We know that we have fans that come down from Tulsa who are season ticket holders, so they make that drive. So the Thunder, they love going up there. There's so many connection points just over the years, activations that have happened up in Tulsa. Of course, that Thunder Fellows program that's up there as well. So this is a great chance for the Thunder to really give a big embrace to that Tulsa community, recognizing their support. And, there's a lot of towns that are outside of Tulsa and close to that part of the state that are able to flock into the BOK Center to see that game too.
So we're expecting a pretty good crowd up there in the BOK Center. That game happens on Thursday against the Detroit Pistons again, which will be a really good test for the Thunder. Then you got a little bit of a break because you need to get ready because the regular season's right around the corner. The regular season opener going to be on the road in Chicago, the Windy City, the Thunder taking on the Bulls on October 25th. So be sure to tune in and catch that game. We'll be up there. It'll be a little bit chilly in Chicago, I think, that time of year.
Hopefully not too chilly. Pretty good time to be heading to Chicago and Cleveland for that first road trip of the year.
I'm used to
late October. Definitely take that over January.
I'm used to the January trips to Chicago, and I'm always just bracing for really cold weather. So
Harris got a big puffer coat. Hopefully you don't need it this trip.
I travel with like 2 of those things ready to go. Hate being cold. Okay, until then, want to thank you so much for watching and listening. Be sure to like, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much to Vasilije Micić and to our producer, Matt Bishop. And until next time, Thunder up, and catch you later.